So even if you go up to the First Circuit and they say, sorry, you have to have trans labels everywhere or else you're a bigot. Even if they say that, the Supreme Court is indicating here, we're gonna reverse you, First Circuit, because this is nonsense. In 2010, the State Department began allowing passport applicants to submit a doctor's certification saying, I've undergone a transition. If you say you're a woman and you walk through the scanner and the scanner shows a giant wiener right in between your legs, then they're gonna have to search for that because it might be a bomb. Victory for the president in the Supreme Court of these United States. You can see the cases against Ashton Orr, and it's about the trans passports and all the different alphabet letters that can be shoved in there, expialidocious, to define your gender. And they said when Trump won, okay, we're done with this nonsense. You are going to use your biological identified sex on your passports, and we're going to stop with this nonsense. And we've seen some other decisions from the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett in particular is like, we're not doing any of this trans stuff, okay? Amy came out aggressively. She's like, you're not a suspect class. You're not like women. You're not like people who are segregated by race. You're not even a quasi-suspect class, okay? So you're a dude, act like it, and get out of my court. And we're like, whoa, Amy, nice. Now we see another battle, and it's being framed this way over from NBC, saying the Supreme Court now allows Trump to enforce passport restrictions that target transgenders, marking them on their passports. All right, we know that this is a return to sanity. The Supreme Court agrees. They came down, they said, all right, look, this case concerns an executive branch Trump policy that requires all new passports, if it's new, to display an individual's biological sex at birth on it. Now, the lower level court from Massachusetts, not a surprise, she preliminary stopped the government from doing that policy. No biological sex. You can pick whatever you want. Xi, Jim, Jers, Jim, Zimbabwe, whatever. Put it on there. You can do whatever you want if you feel that way, because we're living in Insanityville. So the First Circuit said, actually, they're right. You can put whatever you want on your passport. This is about equality. Now, the government then filed this application. So Trump lost twice. The trans passports were around. Trump appealed. Nope, trans passports. We love the T's. Mark it up however you want. Now we're at the Supreme Court. The government is here. Now, applying our familiar factors for a stay, Trump is saying the lower level judge stopped us from enforcing the policy. Please stop them so we can enforce the policy. They say out of the Supreme Court, we now grant the application. Trump wins. Here's why. Displaying passports holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. Okay? In both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact. That's all, without subjecting anyone to any differential treatment. But we know that if you're like a T and somebody misgenders you or mispronouns you or whatever, it's basically like a violent attack. It's basically like murder. You just murdered somebody. And you're such a bad person, and this is not being facetious or overselling it. If you do that, you're such a bad person that you get called a fascist. And that justifies you getting shot and killed in the neck. This is how they think because they're demented. And the court is saying, no. It's just a historical fact. Okay, you're born a dude, call yourself whatever you want, but the passport's going to mark that you're born a dude. Stop trying to be pretending you're a woman. Stop going into locker rooms and harassing women. You're a man. Everyone can see it. On this record, respondents have failed to establish that the government's choice to display biological sex, they say Trump is attacking the trans. They say it has no other purpose other than a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group, the T's, who were until recently the most popular group on the planet, according to our government and the Democratic Party. You had to transify everything. Now they say, no, it's just a fact, okay? Like, it's it. So stop crying. Nor are respondents likely to prevail, the T's, in arguing that the State Department acted arbitrarily and capriciously to like attack you. Chill out. By declining to depart from presidential rules that Congress expressly required it to follow. They say, actually, Congress also passed a statute, 22 U.S. Code 211A, that says you should do that. So for these reasons, the government is going to win. They're just following the law. And it's a historical fact, so chill out. And the district court grant, the lower level judge who's getting reversed here, she granted a class-wide relief. It enjoins the enforcement of Trump's entire policy preventing him that has foreign affairs implications. It's a passport and it's a government document. So because she did that and she can't do that, the government will suffer irreparable injury. And so the application is now granted. Trump wins. The lower level order from Massachusetts is stayed. You lose. Pending disposition of the appeal in the First Circuit and disposition of a petition for a writ here. So even if you go up to the First Circuit and they say, sorry, you have to have trans labels everywhere or else you're a bigot. Even if they say that, the Supreme Court is indicating here, we're going to reverse you, First Circuit, because because this is nonsense. Says, should cert be denied, then our stay shall terminate. But if we grant it, then when we send our judgment back down, then you'll know where we stand on this. So that's the majority decision. And very short, of course, we're going to get the screeching from the three libs. And here is what they say in response. And so it's a 6-3 decision. We've got the three dissenters down here, Jackson, Sotomayor, and Kagan. And here's what they're going to cry about for the T's. And Jackson, of course, they're going to screech about the shadow docket. They love the shadow docket when they're using it, but they don't like it when the other side is doing it. And every side just screeches about it, both sides. Now, as is becoming routine, says Justice ... wait for it, Jackson, says the government seeks an emergency stay of the preliminary injunction and is being routine here. This court misunderstands the assignment, says Ketanji. She says our task in deciding stay applications is not simply to make a back of the napkin assessment. Rather, the nub of the project is to fairly determine our intervention. And to do this, we consider not only their likelihood of success, but also the irreparable harm. So I want to see what she says the harm is to the T's who are not labeled properly on their passports. Let's see. Here, the balance of equities requires weighing the harm to the government from not being able to proceed against the policy and the people, the T's, who would be subject to having a better label on their passport. Let's see. She says the court today ignores critical limits on your discretion. And now you're seeking to enforce a new legal policy immediately, but you are not even offering any evidence of who's going to be harmed. But you spill a bunch of ink and you're not even considering the most vulnerable party here. This has been an unfortunate pattern. And so too has our own refusal to look the other way about basic principles. And so I respectfully dissent. Okay. This is a painful perversion, she says. No, so here's her trans analysis. Ketanji, for the past 33 years across 6 administrations, trans Americans have been able to obtain passports with sex markers that match their gender identity. So whatever their made up belief is in their brains. From 1992 to 2010, passport applicants who wished to obtain passports with sex markers that were different in their birth had to submit evidence of surgical reassignment, which is also insane. It doesn't change your genetic code. In 2010, the State Department began allowing passport applicants to submit a doctor's certification saying, I've undergone a transition. In 2021, the State Department then allowed applicants to self-select. So Joe Biden comes in. So previously, you needed some sort of documentation. You need a doctor's note. Did you get a lopodictomy or an addictomy? Then you'll have some of that in paperwork and writing, and you can come bring it in and show us. And I go, all right, I guess. What are you? Okay, fine. Beginning in 21, the State Department allowed them to then self-select. You're like, no, I'm a woman now. I'm Roberta. I'm beautiful. And they just waltz into Gold's Gyms and say, we own this facility now. You're a woman. Get out of here. You're encroaching on my safe space. Through it all, the indisputable point of a passport remained to attest to the identity and the nationality of the bearer. Yeah, based on who they actually are, okay? The real identity. The State Department's sex marker policies have thus long demonstrated that what is important for identification is the identity today. Yeah, that's true. The identity today, that's the real one, okay? Not the make-believe one that everybody just like, plays around. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't want to fight with you over this. A lot of people just acquiesce to that or just avoid them altogether. No matter, says Ketanji. And we would agree. Yeah, what is the identity today? Like, this is a passport, okay? It's not like a Twitter profile marker or your email signature chain. It's a passport. No matter, on January 22nd, the agency overhauled the rules. It actually does matter. The agency overhauled the rules, reverting to its pre-1992 practices, which are in conformance with the actual law. Its passport policy now requires that all new passports reflect their sex assigned at birth. Why? Because 2 days earlier, Trump issued an executive order. In his order, Trump characterized transgender identity as false and corrosive to the American society. 100% true. The order asserted that the policy of the United States is to recognize two sexes, male and female, which it says is the sex assigned at conception. And the order directed at the Secretary of State to require that any new government IDs reflects biological sex came into effect. The State Department responded. It rescinded its prior policies, didn't change the law. The agency just wrote bad policies. They said, oh, well, that's a bad policy. We're just going to change that. We can. And moving forward, trans Americans who had previously obtained passports with sex markers reflecting their gender identity rather than their assigned sex at birth could continue to use their documents until they expire, okay? So if you have already got it, we're not going to make you change it. We know that you're very experienced at changing things, but you're not going to have to change that, okay? So you can enjoy it. Several trans Americans who want or need new passports, they sued. They said, our documents have to match our fictional identities. Otherwise, we're going to be murdered. They sued. They said, this is upending 33 years of settled practice. Doesn't matter. It's not the law. They claimed that the passport policy violated equal protection discrimination clauses. Again, and that's a constitutional concept, not citing some problem with a statutory violation. It unlawfully discriminated on the basis of sex. It lacked any rational basis because it was motivated by bare animus against transgender Americans. I don't think so. In addition, they said it violates the APA, all terrible claims, insofar as it was arbitrary and capricious and it didn't follow the right rules. Now, Ketanji says, the district court thoroughly examined the facts. She considered the law. She issued a 56-page decision, and she also entered an order stopping the government from attacking the trans. The court made a reasoned determination that they were going to win because they would suffer concrete injury. Wonder what it is. And irreparable injuries of being offended, I guess, because the federal government is not acknowledging their transition. The government would experience no harm from an injunction preventing the enforcement of this new policy. Now, the government appealed. Its appeal remains pending. 2 months later, the district court granted class certification. So all the T's everywhere, not only in Massachusetts, this judge has jurisdiction of in Massachusetts, everywhere, everybody, all the T's. Get whatever passports you want, okay? Because we don't want to upset you. The government unsuccessfully sought a stay in the district court's orders pending appeal, and so they lost that. Now the government is coming to this court because, you know, it's the Supreme Court. And she says, you shouldn't be granting relief here. Where intervention is appropriate, you must tailor the remedy. And she's citing a bunch of law here. She says here, the lower courts have already done the work. She says, based on their own evaluation, the government wouldn't be harmed at all. All it is like a paperwork thing for them. It's going to cost millions of dollars of compliance to conform all of this to, you know, have people, well, actually, she says this guy who's standing in front of me says that she's a woman, but it looks like a dude here because everybody can see shoulders, looks like a friggin' linebacker standing right in front of me, but says it's a woman. So your Customs and Border Patrol, you know, this is strange. So you need some training on this. Like there is actually a compliance cost to all of it, right? Anyway, one example. Fortunately, we've already done all of the analysis, and at minimum, the government bears a burden. It can satisfy that burden if it says it's going to win. Supreme Court said they were, and they haven't demonstrated any harm from this, let alone harm that would allow us to step in now. She says the government's policy that immediate implementation of this is necessary to be accurate, like there's a cost of being inaccurate. According to the government, self-selected gender identity does not provide a meaningful basis for ID. Sex assigned at birth certainly does, because you can see that dude's shoulders from a mile away, and the hands too. It's like palming basketballs. Says the government also contends that the passport policy is part of the effort to impose a uniform definition of sex through the government. And the preliminary injunction, the government says, impedes the president from carrying out these legitimate, she says, supposedly objectives. And so the government's only asserted harm, its only one, is that the president cannot enact his preferred policy. And that is not sufficient. And so what the government needs is to explain the harm. It suggests that there's an urgent foreign policy interest in making sure our passports are accurate. All the government is able to muster is saying it's a contradiction. It's inaccurate. It contradicts biological reality. It's a pretty damn good reason. We don't play make-believe in the federal government, okay? But how urgent can this interest be when the passport policy itself allows trans Americans who already have passports to continue to use those until they expire? That's the point, is we're phasing them out because they're inaccurate. The government also insists that gender identity is not a meaningful basis for identification. No, it's not. What if somebody wants to just say, I'm a black man now? No, I identify as black. No, really. Or whatever. Would we allow that? Would you need a doctor's note? There was that one woman, Dolezal. Could she go on to her passport and say she's a black lady? No, that's not how this works. Strangely begging the question why sex markers are required on passports at all. For identification, Ketanji. In any event, they provide no evidence of harmful confusion or other problems caused by the T's who use passports with T identities. To the contrary, she says it's gender incongruent passports that cause confusion. Ketanji sees the linebacker who's dressed as a woman and she says, hello, madam, and like plays the game. Everybody else goes, huh? Now, as for the government's suggestion that the president is harmed by not being able to impose uniform definitions, there is no actual harm. Now, at the end of the day, it's the T's that's going to be harmed. And so this is unlawful, says Ketanji. The current record also demonstrates that the trans are exposed to increased violence. Why? Are they waving their passports around? If their passports are mislabeled, it's increased violence. One person, she's trans and intersex. She asserts that she's been sexually assaulted by the TSA. Well, you know, that may make sense to me. If you say you're a woman and you walk through the scanner and the scanner shows a giant wiener right in between your legs, then they're going to have to search for that because it might be a bomb. This is why this whole thing is insane. Another plaintiff called Chastain attests to having been strip searched because the documents didn't match the gender expression. And someone else also got invasive pat downs. And I'd like to see what these people look like, to be honest. After they observed the disjunction between between her female gender expression and the male sex marker on her passport. Like literally, it's a dude. Confirm her gender, Zaya. It's probably a male to female. It's hard to even keep track of these things. Zaya. Ketanji's calling her a her, which means it's probably a him. So male sex marker on her passport. Yes, the dude has a bulge in his pants. TSA agent says, I gotta check that. You say you're a female, you should not have anything there. You have a carry-on with you. What's inside there? And 2 others have been accused of presenting fake identity documents. They were forced to out themselves as trans and non-binary to TSA agents. There's a security implication. You can't smuggle in stuff in your genital nether regions. Airport checkpoints are stressful and invasive. Yeah. Even without the added friction, just say what you are. I have a penis down there, okay? I like to say I'm a woman, but I got a penis here. It's not off yet. So you got to go through like it's part of the reality, okay? Sorry, we can't play your little game here. The passport policy also invites the probing, at times humiliating additional scrutiny that they've experienced. Well, it's part of security, man. What if you have a bomb in there? Given this, it's no surprise that each of these people credibly testified that they're going to experience significant anxiety and fear. That's all of our problems now. For their safety, if required to use passports that reflect their sex assigned at birth. Absent an injunction, plaintiffs and the classes of T's they represent are forced to make a difficult choice, using gender incongruent passports, risking harassment and bodily invasions on the one hand, and avoid all other activities like opening a bank account. Anything else that may require a passport, right? Got to bring your passport in. So these are big harms for them, and they're going to just be so embarrassed that they can't actually say what their biological, physical reality is. So these are real world harms. They're going to have anxiety and they're going to have fear. So our entire federal government has to indulge in their insanity. So that is from Ketanji, about as Ketanji as you could get and imagine. And so big win for the president. And I think this is going to be the pattern that we see moving forward, that the conservative justices are just not indulging it. We're not creating a new suspect class. Okay. The trans are the trans. You guys can just deal with it. And don't act like you're a group of women who deserve the same quasi protections that the women have. And there are biological differences between men and women, which is why there are some laws that are kind of women specific that protect women in certain ways, because there's biological actual differences between the two. Why it's a quasi suspect class. We have this thing called intermediate scrutiny. There's all this case law around it. And so you don't get to just say that you are a new class when these biological distinctions clearly matter. And if you're smuggling in a carry-on in your genital region, you're going to be subject to scrutiny for those things if you say that you don't have them and you do. So nice win from the Supreme Court. The liberal justices doing the same thing. They're being attacked. There's anxiety. I know. America's so hard to just live. So we see Supreme Court grants a victory. It's a stay. The case will be further briefed in the Court of Appeals and may make its way back, but we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do.